Raymond,
Okay,
check faster.
start it. I think it's fine. Good. Okay.
Okay, can you sit down and start? And review. Cool. Hi, welcome to the Open Grandfinals of Formosa. Woo! Cool. I'm Wei Dao, your chair for this round. I'm my pronouns are they, he, she, and handling with me are.
I'm Nasa, she did pronounce.
Cool. Great. We on opening government we have insults over rebuttals. On opening opposition we have the chef and the cook. Closing government we die in IR round CEO Alohomara. So for without further ado, we'll invite the Prime Minister. Give him the floor. Here.
Alright. Okay. Everyone ready?
Yeah.
Okay, go. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Love will only end in heartbreak. Love is likely to end with you suffering more than all the happiness that you gain throughout your relationship. First of all, setup. In the current status quo, love has become a corrupted thing. Divorce, breakup, cheating, having sex with like lots of different people has become very rampant in society. This is because, I don't know, with the rise of hedonism with these people, all they want is just to seek this temporary happiness. We say that the suffering that it causes is a lot more. What is our path to victory? We prove that if we were to choose this, there will be there's a high likelihood of a net loss of suffering in our lives. This is how we win. Now, three pieces of framing before moving on to my constructive. 1, happiness shouldn't mostly come from love. Happiness should come from other things. 2nd, we have a net loss of suffering on our side. 3rd, it doesn't mean this doesn't mean this lack of romantic attraction or sexual attraction does not mean that you cannot have friends. And this is just to avoid whatever stupid arguments if that like opposition wants to push. Okay, so how do we get this net gain of happiness? We give you 4 mechanisms. First of all, love is difficult.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Love is difficult, right? Because love isn't just a single straight line. There are many ups and downs throughout your entire relationship. And many times you feel stressed because your partner isn't like doing well. They get sick. You get worried about them. All of this is called all of this feeling you are feeling is suffering, right? And also moreover, there's like you're likely to get into like arguments with your partner also. It doesn't really, and all of this will cause you like definitely like emotional stress or it'll just make your mental health like worse, right? All of this is simply just defined under suffering, right? And also love is also very difficult to maintain because you have to constantly do things for a partner. You basically just have to feel like an attraction towards them, right? So love is difficult. 2nd mechanism, happiness. The happiness love provides isn't a isn't a constant guarantee, or rather isn't a consistent enough guarantee. I told you in my characterization that currently divorce and breakups, a lot of these things are all very rampant, right? It means that okay. So we have different types of love. If you're in a relationship right now, you have a partner. There are 2 possibilities from this. You either break up, suffering, or get married, right? And yeah, sure, there's lots of happiness through this. You have children, you live a happy life, but we say that what is likely to happen is actually breakup, or divorce. Because right now, if you look at America, look at well, the entire world at least, divorce is very rampant. Divorce rates are currently at an all-time high. You are likely to actually have a divorce. Statistics quite literally prove that. And we say that this chance should not be actually taken to cause this amount of suffering. And do remember that if you were to have a divorce, the amount of suffering, the amount of mental trauma it actually imposes on these people are usually very, very large, because now they lose their home, they lose their children, they lose the people that they love the most. This amount of suffering, we say, completely, and we say that this is really bad. I'll take a point if you have one.
When these experiences also make us grow and become mature, why is it bad we at least give these choices to individuals to explore and experience?
That'll be answered later in my, it'll be answered later on in my speech, sorry. Okay, then also, love, then again, yes, love basically isn't guaranteed, because do remember that there are lots of external factors that you cannot control, such as war, where like, I don't know, your partner has to go back to their home country or something, and also there's also things like I don't know, your partner having to move away to another country, or them dying of cancer or something. All of these things simply just make love very, very unstable, love very unguaranteed, and basically make suffering an extremely high possibility. So third mechanism. Without feeling attraction, you can find happiness in more sustainable things that can probably give you happiness. This looks like you liking video games, you playing video games, or reading, or going out to the park, or exercising. All of these things are probably very sustainable and are likely to go away. Like, I don't think your park is going to be destroyed by the government one day randomly, and we say that the likelihood of that is probably pretty low. And what this all causes is probably a net loss of suffering, because right now the most common form of suffering is probably through love, because love or romance is probably is the most common thing, or the thing that most people have nowadays, which is a relationship, and they get most of their own mental suffering from those relationships. After they break up, after they get divorced, even if they get into an argument, all this causes suffering, which is really bad. Okay, so why is there more happiness on our side? Yes, why is there more happiness on our side? Because now you've eliminated the thing that probably brings you the most suffering ever, right? Which is heartbreak, which I've already given a billion lines of mechanisms for. And we said that this is good, because now, because of the impact of heartbreak, divorce, etc., and all of these things, whatever happened to you, also things that, another thing is hedonism, which is very rampant. We say that what hedonism does to you is that, after you have sex with this one person, and after, then you have sex with another person, then eventually the amount of happiness you gain from that dies down. It goes on a downwards trend until you feel absolutely nothing. You become just a nihilistic fuck, right? And we say that this is all very bad, because this all is just a net negative impact on your own life. We say that without romantic attraction, you are going to be assigning value in other things that are much more sustainable, such as hobbies, such as your work, such as your career. And with all this, we all eliminate the suffering, because we say that the suffering is extremely huge in love, and probably extends far beyond any happiness that you're going to get off the relationship, because of the fact that now you know that you lost all of their happiness, and you will never find the amount of happiness that you got over there in your future, which furthermore adds on to your suffering. So proud to propose, vote OG.
Cool, thanks. I'm going to lead up opposition.
That was the first person.
Everyone ready?
Yep. Also, to the audience, please silence your phones.
People survive by studying science, but people live for poetry music, and art. So proud to oppose this motion. I think what the opening government came up here and said is simply saying that love has its own risks, hence people should not practice love. I think this is already quite a false logic, simply because that even though there's a risk of damage, even if there's a risk of failure, insofar we tell you that there's still meaning to love, there's still chances of this thing, like you can gain something from love, is inherently something that humans should have the autonomy over, right? But also, right, he also came up here in his framing and told us that the metric of human value is solely happiness and to minimize suffering. I think it's just quite untrue that the human value is simply about minimizing suffering. I think what humans find meaningful in life is all about personal fulfillment. That's why people go so far to the extent, for example, they climb rock in the wild, etc. Even though it might be damaging to their health, even though it might be some kind of suffering, as long as they can find a certain degree of meaning in life, they're able to achieve actual self-satisfaction and happiness. But also, he came up here in his arguments and told us three main things. One, he told us that love is difficult and that there are up and downs in love. We tell you that this is exactly what inspires people to find meaning in life. Love should be the driving factor later. Driving factor for people to actually discover their own true self, which I'll explain in my framing later. But also, right, he told you that there are simply alternatives of love, and that there are other ways for you to achieve the same effect. But I think insofar we tell you that love is an exclusive feeling that people gain, and exclusive in the reward, we already fulfill our burden per their own framing. A bit of reframing then. One, on what is the value of romance and self-attraction. I think A, right? It is a special and distinct kind of connection, i.e., it is something you can put your trust into, you put your heart into. This is likely going to be true, even if a spark of a relationship might be surface level at first, but in order for you to achieve an actual relationship with someone, it is important for you to actually involve yourself in a relationship. This means exposing yourself to your partners about your weaknesses, but also simply just telling them how you feel or what you like in general. Know that this is quite an exclusive relationship, that even if they try to claim that they have families, they have friends, it is only if people want to achieve that deep level of relationship, that deep trust of relationship, they're only able to achieve that. But two, we tell you that the value of it is simply gives meaning to life. I think we already gave you substantial reasoning to how that how that makes sense, simply because that you think about, you want to spend more time with your partner, you want to spend the rest of your life with your partner. It simply means that you show a certain degree of commitment, certain degree of meaning. Moving on to the first argument then, on why on our side of the house we get actual catharsis, actual self-actualization. I think putting yourself into these romantic relationships also means that you live a much more meaningful life. Simply because that since you experience these ups and downs in a relationship, simply because you have so much emotion, so strong feelings for a certain individual, this means that a person can experience extreme emotions that they cannot experience elsewhere in other forms of relationship. This means that the expression of those feelings would take place in, for example, creating art, creating poetry, creating music, etc. They would notice more of the beauty in life and try to, take their own experience out into expressing what they feel in their relationship. Know that these are usually the things that we actually strive for. This is the reason why we can work long hours and work, but also after work we go to bars or we go to a theater to enjoy the actual beauty in life. These are the things that we actually strive for. But why is it important in a grander scale? Simply because that it also exposes this art, but also this kind of emotion to the general public. This means that a lot of people now are also being able to share the same experience and benefit from this shared emotion as well. Before I move on to the second argument of why we get more self-improvement on our side of the house, I'll take a point.
If the feeling of love is as large as you claim, wouldn't people just try and find love constantly? Let's say after a heartbreak, instead of actually dealing with it, they'll just move on to another person, and this is actually harmful to their mental health because they're not actually dealing with their heartbreak, and they're just going down a cycle of hedonism.
Okay. Moving on to the second argument, which completely deals with that POI, why we get more self-improvement. I think they already gave us quite a good framing on why breakups are detrimental, right? But I think it completely feeds onto this argument simply because the very reason why these breakups are detrimental is because you have already put a lot of emotional effort into this relationship. This means that you constantly ask yourself what exactly happened in that relationship that made you lose this specific person, lose this meaningful relationship that you had and you are committed to. This means that this introspective feeling and this introspective narrative you have for yourself also means that you would constantly look for more improvements that prevent you from experiencing this detrimental breakup or detrimental feeling again. This also means that on our side of the house, the implication is simply that people are more likely to actually constantly seek self-improvement and actually seek what they can actively do in future relationships in order to have more meaning in life. Super proud to oppose this motion. Thank you.
Cool, thanks. Can I get a DPM?
Ready?
Yeah.
Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. We tell you that in one love relationship, the damage is too big that per individual cannot take. The lesson that they learn via a love relationship, can still achieve in other ways. For example, friendship, for example, families. Before moving on to my clashes, I'll have some rebuttals. Their house, they tell you that they can learn things in a relationship. We tell you that this is bad because if you want to learn something via a relationship, you're probably gonna have to get hurt at the very first place. And we tell you that this hurt is different from a family or a friendship because the differences between friendship and romance is different. We tell you that the impact and the damage that caused by a love relationship is even worse than having a hurt within a friendship, right? And we tell you that when this happens, you'll probably face a mental breakdown, according to the framing that Raphael gave you. And we tell you that even if you don't buy this, it's unlikely to happen. It's unlikely for people to learn via a relationship. Because when they have a mental breakdown, they'll be doubting themselves again and again. And it's unlikely for them to learn via this experience. And even if you do learn things, we tell you that this is still bad because you'll be afraid of stepping in another relationship in the future. The impact they bring us today is only impact in the future rounds. We tell you that the thing we have to focus right now is how people feel right now, right? And we also tell you that even if it happens, you still have to suffer from mental illness. We tell you that this impact is only exclusive under their case because in the very first place, in our framing, we tell you that the difference between romance and love relationship.
Point.
Later, in our house, we tell you that the lesson they learn can still learn in other ways. And we tell you that this is good because the hurt you feel in a family or a relationship might not be like as much as how you hurt in a romance relationship. And we can learn things without being like totally damaged or having a very serious mental breakdown.
POI.
I'll take a POI.
When you don't feel romance and there's no sexual attractions, how do you build family?
You won't love your mother. You won't feel sexual attraction to your mother, right? We tell that the romance and the love relationship is different. another piece of rebuttal. They tell you about the value of romance. They tell that you can tell your spouse how you feel, how like your weakness. We tell you that this can still happen under our case. I think we can still show weakness to our family or our friends, right? And we tell you that this is exclusive under our side, and we tell you that this impacts only lead to a positive impact. Because I think compared to a lover, no matter what you happen on you, no matter what weakness happen on you, I think family will still support you. Compared to a lover, right? We tell that the likelihood that family will still support you is higher than a lover. Okay, now moving on to the extensions. I want to tell you about individual choices. 2 layers. The status quo is that people being influenced by love too much. For example, a lot of people choose to stay in Taiwan to study because of love. They don't want to leave their lovers, right? In this case, love became too high of a burden for individual and it affects personal choices and personal developments. In their house, people can't make best choices for themselves because they can argue that the best is getting married or getting in touch with the lover. We tell that this is not true because this exactly proves how people can be manipulated by romance or by relationships. We tell you that people's ways of thinking may be impacted very, very much. And it makes choices based on love and based on sexual attachment. In our house, we tell you that a lot of things that are more important than having a love relationship. And the things that you can learn, or things that you can achieve in a love relationship can still happen on our side. For example, self-development and career choices. People are able to choose without being controlled by love relationship. And we tell you that this is exclusive under our side. And the influence of love impact people too much. For example, like Raphael just told you before, when a lot of people is prioritizing love compared to other things, it only leads to bad influence. It's likely for them to lead to a bad ending no matter how good the progress was. And even if the progress was good, we tell you that the progress and the things that they feel and that they learn can still happen under our side. So we tell you that the argument they have does not stand. Second layer, about suffering is too big that we need to prevent this from happening. We tell you that in this debate, we believe the stakeholders are the one who's likely to have and who's likely to take this motion is the one who have low self-esteem in the very first place. I think in their case, they're making the stakeholders even worse, right? They even have lower self-esteem because when they want to learn something or they even step into a relationship, they might feel like hurt or something. And we tell you that in this scenario, people and our stakeholder will be impacted very, very much. And they'll be doubting themselves. And this is unlikely for them to achieve individual choices. We tell you that people are able to reach some happiness as love in other ways. And we tell you that in this way, it's better because they don't have to have such a big mental breakdown. And even though love can bring happiness and influence individuals too much that they only prioritize love or they only prioritize romance. And this is bad. And also, it's too much risk for people to take. The risk is that having mental breakdown and having people cheated on you. For example, like having quality time with family and do the things you like instead of spending time with your spouse is important because in your argument they tell you that they'll have like self-fulfillment. We tell you that self-fulfillment can only happen outside because the self-fulfillment in this scenario is better compared to them having some sort of self-fulfillment but also having backlash, but also having mental breakdown. I think under this scenario, it's better for people to seek happiness via different ways. Happiness is better because they won't have to suffer that much of a mental breakdown. They might argue that fights will still happen, like in a family or in friendships. We tell you that the hurt that people feel is different because romantic or sexual attraction influence people too much. For all these reasons, I'm going to propose.
Cool, thanks. Can I get a yellow?
Start my speech in 3, 2, 1. The human experience is fundamentally built upon the ability of people to choose and our capacity to feel things to the fullest extent. The problem with the government branch is very simple. They assume harm without proving that harm to necessarily be a harm. So they claim people are going to suffer. It's unclear why suffering itself is inherently harmful or is inherently bad. The crucial problem here is that in many cases of human life, or in many cases of the human experience, suffering is an inescapable part of life, but more importantly, is oftentimes viewed by individuals to be a meaningful part of life that is important to them. What does this look like? This looks like the careers that people choose to take, and they choose to have sleepless nights in schools or in their jobs, in order for them to be able to have this form of self-actualization that says, my career is important to me, that is why I choose to suffer regardless of it harming certain parts of my health. That is why people choose to become athletes, for example, regardless of potential injuries, for instance, precisely because they believe this to be important to themselves as a person. Regardless of a potential harm, the most important value in this debate that you ought to judge the debate upon is the capacity of the individual to be able to have the full human experience and to be fully human. This is precisely what we defend in opening opposition, and that's why we're already winning this debate. Let's respond to opening government. The first thing they say is that love only ends in heartbreak. And they tell us that, this is why divorce rates are up and people have cheating and breakups and those kinds of things, and these are all bad. The conclusion here is that they say people are going to grief. They don't explain why grief is a bad thing. We explain that grief is likely going to be a good thing. The reason why this is true is because in many instances, people find a lot of meaning in grief. This is because you're able to find yourself in a position of vulnerability that dictates the way you ought to live your life, in a position where you are unable to fully, assess that life is a good thing. What does this look like? Oftentimes when we lose loved ones, we deal with grief subjectively and in very different ways. This is because individuals have varying needs and have varying, responses to emotions. What does this mean? This means that at a point in which an individual grieves the loss of a certain relationship or the loss of some sort of romantic attraction for a certain person, we argue that this is a good thing because it reminds them that there is value in life and that there is value in doing the things that they pursue and the things that are meaningful to them. That is to say that they are still likely to love people, and they're still likely to want to be romantically attracted to people in the future, as they say, and we think they're still good. But crucially then, we believe that this debate ought not be judged upon the arbitrary notion of a net loss of suffering, because we have to ask the question again, is suffering inherently harmful? We believe it isn't. But secondly, we recognize people's capacity to make rational moral decisions and to act on their own preferences as individuals based on their lived experiences. And we are not able to morally and arbitrarily choose for people insofar as it is valuable and important for people to be able to be not only in touch with their emotions, but also be able to act on their emotions based on their preferences and based on the lived experiences that they have. But the last thing that comes from DPM was to say that people can be manipulated and inhibited by the power of love, i.e. people studying in Taiwan likely choose to study in Taiwan because, their girlfriend is here or whatever. The problem here is, firstly, oftentimes in this context and in this situation, this is the meaningful choice for this individual to make. Note, this is independent of any future outcome, because in the moment, this is what makes you happy. This is what is meaningful to you, and this is what brings life to you as an individual and allows you to holistically feel the human experience that we say is important. But secondly, I would suggest that the objective measure of good ought not to exist in a context of one's lived experiences in which a subjective measure of what is good for that individual is what we ought to apply. But thirdly, note that limitations is not exclusive to the romantic feeling or to the romantic attraction to a certain individual. Even if you still believe that limitation is a bad thing, we argue that this is not a mutually exclusive harm. Oftentimes this exists and manifests for various reasons. Like, for example, loyalty to certain school systems, or nationalism, for instance, why people want to always shout Taiwan #1 and those kinds of things. First thing I want to talk about then, I want to talk about choice. We go through life subjectively in very different ways, and so expanding the areas of opportunity for people to live life in the ways that are meaningful to them can only be considered as a social good. The first thing to say here is that government bench removes the human capacity to fully associate with another human being on a level that is inherently different because of the psychological and biological conditioning of humans. That is to say that oftentimes there is a barrier that prevents you from being able to be fully vulnerable and fully associate yourselves with people like your family or people like your friends because there is some sort of, insecurity or shyness that you're unable to overcome, as we explained from first speaker. But secondly, we say that meaningful choices, regardless of outcome, are good for you as an individual because it's what allows you to be happy in the moment regardless of what happens in the future. But more importantly, this is what allows you to live fully in the human experience. But again, this is also what allows individuals to feel good. Closing.
Do you think that asexual people have no meaning in life?
People have meaningful experiences and meaningful relationships regardless of these kinds of things, but the crucial difference is that it isn't about talking about one specific group of people. Again, we explained that expanding the areas of opportunity for the vast majority of individuals is the most important value in this debate because only upon the point at which individuals can choose what is good for them makes things what allows them to experience the human condition fully. The last thing to say here is, it is your ability to feel a sense of catharsis, again, as we explained from first. Last question then. What is inherent to the ability to feel romantic and sexual attraction that completes the human experience? We say it is your ability to choose a person other than yourself constantly. It is your ability to associate fully with someone who is able to understand you in ways that you otherwise wouldn't be able to understand yourself, and therefore live a more meaningful life as a result. Government bench prevents individuals from having the full human experience and from being fully human, and limits the amount of choice that people have based on the context that they have, and we have done the opposite. That's why we won this debate.
Well, thanks. Does anyone have an extra? Sorry.
You can have my pen.
No, I want your pen.
Thanks, Nasa. Or Lysi. Does anyone?
Oh, wait, what's the pen?
Who's next?
Wait, what's the pen?
Give me the pen, this is nice. Oh, this is what?
Oh, why?
Oh, this is what?
Okay, that's good. Your favorite.
Wait. Sorry, yes. Technical difficulties. Member of Gato,
We can find another pen.
It's fine later.
You have a pen? I got it.
About a general
Examination
of life in the human experience. Yeah.
Before I start, thank you for having me here. And I'm a representative of the National Talent University Club, telling everyone I'm happy to be here. Okay, my speech. Thank you.
We love you, Francis.
Where are the French fries at?
My speech starts in 3, 2, 1. So the problem with this debate, the opening half is that both sides only engage whether romantic relationships will cause pain or the fulfillment. So in our side, we're going to give you an extension that increases the likelihood of pain, but not also rely on some romantic is inherently painful. We'll tell you something that is from family and also some alternatives that we can give. Then also some more stakeholders we're going to give. So first is going the rebuttal of the previous speaker. So we think in their case, they've been talking about that the ability to love is more important. We think that this is not really the case. At first, we think that the ability of romantic attraction is not definitely the same as ability to love, which means that although you are not attracted by the other person, which has some sexual relationship with you, you still can care or love your family. We think that in our side, we still can feel like the caring in our side. We still feel like your family still loves you. We think that later, we think that what's the harm in their side is if without romantic, or if they feel that they are betrayed by their partners, the relationships is not going to exist. The second part is that we think that they think that the ability of creating poetry or to love or watch some movies, we think that the impact is not big enough. Okay, so for the extension we're going to give from the opening side. First, I'm going to give you why people are easily controlled by romance, and so why not born without these abilities is so important. So first of all, the stakeholders, like people are starting to have like attractions when they're in the young age, they are young, and this is when people are still immature. Things like teenagers, they met with people with different backgrounds or different personalities. They are not they are not aware that how their own personalities, which means that they're most likely to be engaged or they're going to be attracted to people they're different from them. But they don't have the mature ability to tell that whether I'm going to get together with this person. The result is that people, there are some irrational results are being made. They don't know if they are suitable for each other. There are some examples. For example, some girls they accidentally get pregnant. Although the chances are rare, but the harm is so big. Is that first, people they don't have the responsibility. Although you have to give birth to a child, you have to sacrifice more. For example, your career, your freedom, you have to pay more attention of them. So you have to less time for friends. So we think that although you have the ability to love, we think that you also sacrifice more things. The second layer is that in the romance, people are going to make irrational decision. We think that in the long term, is really harmful. We think that okay. We think that also there's something other thing that is impactful is that people they have to face whether I like this person or not, or I'm going to be compete with the other person. They're richer than me or they're prettier than me. They have to face a kind of process. They have a low self-value. So we think that this is not only just because the romantic relationship itself is because people are going to break up, but also they have to control themselves are being competed with others. The next extension is about family. So we think we give you an alternative is that we advocate people to have family, but it's not because of the attraction. So we think that sexual attraction is the key to people or to make a relationship. In their side, but in our side, people still can still form a family by. For example, people with the same religion or they have the same education, similar background. This means that they are more likely to know with each other, and also they have the same interest to talk with each other. We think that this is also can make people have family, and they can also have birth. Also, they still can learn how to love with carrying a child. Later. Next extension, I'm going to talk about why. What is so harm? Why is so harm that if people are getting a relationship by first of the sexual attraction? For example, if a woman they like a strong woman with dominant power, but it found that this man is going to beat you in domestic violence. What the woman is going to pay for is that she has to protect her child, or she cannot even leave because she knows she'll get beaten more. So she has to use the whole life to pay for what kind of a reckless decision what she had made. We think that people don't have to be paid for that just for living a life lesson, because we know that already from the social media, we know that how painful or how hard it is for people to live in. Later. So we think that people experience in our side are not necessary for people have to going through. We think people still filter the most suitable partners for them. So next, I'm going to move through the second discrimination. The second argumentation is discrimination. So we think that this is harmful in their side about minorities, because in this motion we talk about a bill of ignorance. So maybe we'll be born into a body. It's like you are the minorities. You're minorities. You may be gay, you might be the other genders, but you find yourself different from the other people. So, which means that you have to face some painful process. For example, you have to conquer that you're different from the others. You have to conceal yourself because you don't know if if you don't know if your identity is true or not. Also, you'll easily be hated by everyone because if you try to push for some same equality, people will think you're asking for some privilege by calling you in some specific terms to give you respect. This means that people in the minority, if they have to gain some sexual attractions, they have to go through more process for each other, and they have to take some peer pressure with each other. So we think that, in this term, the other side have to give us. Have to also engage with us about how they are less likely to make these group are less likely to gain pain. So in summary, we think that the suffer from reckless actions can be eliminated. Also, we don't have that much experience of getting romantic, but at least we can avoid people from getting some results that they cannot take it back. And I'm proud to propose.
Cool, thanks. Can I get the member up?
Oh my god, she is pure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that romance is a very basic component for our society. We think our society and civilization is built upon romance and love, and that's why side-closing government would like to root for that. In a world where people were given a choice of veil of ignorance, we think it's always much better that people choose to feel romantic or sexual attractions, because we think these values bring greater benefits to our society and to our humanity. In our speech, we're going to tell you why it is crucial to have these romantic and sexual attractions in societal level and overall humanity. This will be differentiating ourselves from opening opposition, where their case mainly focused on individual level of growth. We want to tell you that love is a very basic component of human evolution, and our humanity existed with the usage of this emotion as well as this intuition. But before we move on to our case, several engagements to both opening and closing government. First of all, opening government told us that the net loss of suffering going through this romantic relationship or whatnot is too big. Love is so difficult to maintain, that's why they need to avoid. We think this is to say that love is so difficult to acquire and celebrate because it is complicated and deep, rather than saying that it should be avoided altogether. But furthermore, we think these kind of complicated feelings and intuitions actually allow individuals to grow, and this leads people to evolve much better into surviving for better future, right? Secondly, previous speaker also told us that there are other ways to gain happiness, and the examples we heard were about playing games. We tell you there are different levels of happiness in life. Human beings are more complicated than simply feeling happy after winning a game. We tell you that playing games and buying things may give you lower gratitude, but they last for very short-term periods, and they're pretty cheaper. Compared to that, sacrificing for your loved ones, maybe giving up your happiness for your family, or rooting for your children and your partners when they are challenging themselves, we think there are greater happiness and gratitude that you gain from these, and these tend to last longer because these rooted down in your emotions and in your memories actually give you greater power to go beyond your comfort zone. That's why we say these kind of romantic sexual attractions are driving forces for individuals to pursue greater happiness at the end of the day. Previous speaker also told us that these sufferings may be too big for those who have low self-esteem. Please be reminded, judge, we're talking about a case of veil of ignorance. You don't know whether you will be born as a Korean woman or Asian or whatnot. When you don't have any information, we think the government should actually promote people to try and explore new experiences, because this leads to greater humanity at the end of the day. Engaging with closing government. They told us the ability to love family exists without sexual attraction. Ladies and gentlemen, how do you make babies? We think it's a total torture when you don't feel sexual attractions and maintain this family relationship. In closing government, we are rather going to tell you, in their world, there is no family. There is no individual building partnership because you don't feel attracted to these individuals from the beginning, right? That's why in Gulf Bench, there's no family, there's no love, there's no support. That's why we tell you that's something that we need to avoid. No, thank you. Furthermore, closing government also had worries about irrational choices. Maybe some people will have babies when they are young. 3 responses. 1, that is to say, we need to educate these individuals and make them become more responsible. That also means that we need to go for maturity instead of being more simple. Secondly, how do you know this will happen under veil of ignorance? Again, I think the government bench has to tell us, their biggest burden is to tell us why under a veil of ignorance, when informations are not given enough, they will still choose to not love and go for individuality. We say that we need to be pushing for the choices that make us grow rather than regress. That's the last response to closing government. Yes, opening government.
So currently, there are already people who don't experience romantic or sexual attraction. So are you to say that the asexuals don't experience?
No. We do acknowledge they're asexuals. We do want them to feel happy in their own ways. But that is not to say, therefore, we should choose to go asexual, right? If the choice is given to us, we're trying to say that romantic sexual attraction should exist in our society, and that is something that the government should promote, because we think these are the very basis of building humanity and growing civilization, right? Now let's move on to our closing opposition case, where we will talk about why these crucial feelings build society and grow humanity altogether. So first question, why are feeling romance and sexual attractions necessary? We think these are necessary because these are fundamentally the fruition of evolution. We love each other, we get attracted to other people because we learned from our experience that being imperfect, vulnerable, full of flaws, we are better off when we are with other partner. We want to get married or have these commitments because that makes sure that we are safer and we are happier. And because of this, we think that these romantic sexual attractions evolved and developed in our human nature. We say this assures that we are loved. This assures that we can be accepted no matter what. And this assures people to move out from their comfort zone and try to do something new. When civilization is built upon these individuals forming families, communities, and societies with the basis of this feeling of love, we say this love brings safety, strong happiness, meaningful, trustworthy relationship, and that's something that the Gulf Bench is losing. Lastly, we say this love is a driving force of individuals to flourish, but furthermore, to grow the society together. At the end of the day, the people who are still fighting in wars, the people who are still giving up their hours of sleep, the people who are sacrificing their daily happiness, the ones that the OG has mentioned, is because they want greater value and greater good to their families and to themselves. We say by bonding this love for each other and having these romances within our families, we channel more opportunities and build bridges for our humanities. Very proud to oppose.
Cool, thanks. Reminder, protected time is 1 to 6. Gafut.
What to say?
Yeah.
Oh. Sorry, I don't type. Okay. Sorry. I'll type.
Yeah. Everyone, please let's be reminded to tag the other speakers if you're going to be giving POIs. Yeah. Like simple stuff. Cool. Thanks. Gafut.
Here.
Okay, starting at 3, 2. I don't really like how everyone else in this round just kind of ignores that minorities exist. Francis is the only person who tells you that gay people exist. They're discriminated against. On opposition side, you don't get to choose not to be a gay person. I want to make three things clear first before I dive into my house by house comparison. The first is that I think that discrimination against sexual minorities is extremely rampant and has an extremely large impact on people. This is because the thing that's being attacked when you're a minority is your very identity, is the people that you love, right? But I think also, in our modern context, reactionary ideologies are on the rise. This means that you necessarily have people who are actively trying to oppress queer people, even after they have already secured progress. They're trying to push this progress back, right? But I think this manifests in ways such as, in liberal countries such as the US or the UK, you have queer youth that are many times more likely than straight youth to actually be diagnosed with clinical depression. You have trans people that are 4 times more likely to commit suicide because of their environments. But the second thing I want to make clear is that women are extremely disadvantaged when they have romantic and sexual attraction, right? Because you have, for example, power imbalances in romantic relationships with men. You have a lack of pregnancy care for women who do have sex with men and do get pregnant. You also have, for example, a lack of abortion access in many countries around the world, which ultimately just means that if you're a woman who is romantically and sexually attracted to men, you're probably very likely to be screwed over by the system. But the third thing I want to make clear is that the only unique part of romantic attraction is the irrationality or the obsession that Francis presents to you. I don't think the opposition side is able to say why romantic attraction is unique in any way, except that you have very extreme emotions. I think that we also have extreme emotions when we engage with our friends, right? For example, I have a best friend of 6 years who I love very much. I think this sort of extreme emotion can still exist in platonic and familial relationships. I'm gonna rebut OO first. 4 responses here. The first is that they say that suffering has meaning. I think this is probably the most important response here, because their entire case relies on framing out OG's suffering attack by saying that suffering is good and that suffering gives your life meaning. So I'm gonna tell you why suffering doesn't have meaning. I think the first thing is that OO presents examples to you where the suffering that people endure actually has an outcome, right? So they say that suffering has meaning, but I think that the examples they present only have meaning because they actually give you fulfillment after you undergo suffering. So for example, you suffer through breakups because you know there's hope for finding love in the future. You suffer through very hard nights of work because you know that you'll find fulfillment in your job. I don't think that discrimination gives you any fulfillment. And given the characterization that Francis gives you about how likely it is for you to get discriminated against if you're a minority, I think this means that this sort of suffering is not going to present to you any sort of fulfillment. I think at most, maybe it gives you more empathy or more understanding of social issues. I don't think this is enough to weigh over the extreme suffering that's caused when you are a sexual minority, so depression or committing suicide. But I think that even if it does give you fulfillment, the overwhelming perception of minorities in that moment when you're being discriminated against is that this is really horrible. You don't want to suffer through this. You probably are not going to have any hope at all in the moment. But I think even if suffering can give you meaning, this is only to a certain extent, right? Suffering only gives you meaning insofar as it doesn't actually stop you from achieving fulfillment. Because they say that it gives you meaning because you can be fulfilled. I think when suffering is large to a particular extent, it actually stops you from achieving anything at all. This looks like, for example, discrimination making it so that you're scared to pursue someone that you love, or for example, the lack of abortion access for women, making it so that they're scared to pursue a relationship with men because they're afraid that they have to give up their bodily autonomy, right? But my second response here is on art, because they say that romantic relationships exclusively produce really good art. I think we already proved to you that you can get a deep emotional connection. You can have trust or physical intimacy. You can hug your friend, right? You probably also are able to love your friend very deeply. I think most people here probably have a best friend, right? I think this all means that the definition that Francis proposes to you about obsession with a romantic attraction is the only difference between romantic and non-romantic relationships. I think this means that you're probably also able to get this sort of art under our site as well. Maybe we don't have obsession. Maybe we have maybe a bit less art about love. But I think this is fine because we still have the overwhelming majority of the characteristics present in romantic love in our relationships and our site. But the third response here is about self-reflection. Anton tells you that people suffer and then they learn from it and they can grow after they break up from people. I think that this is probably not true because the way people learn is in supportive environments, right? This is why we have programs teaching teachers how to emotionally support students so that they could reach their maximum potential, right? I don't think that a breakup is the most optimal environment for this. I think what is more optimal is during a romantic relationship or maybe during a friendship where you're actually able to get that support that you need. I think that after you break up, you don't have that support. But on our side, because you don't have this sort of thing, I think we're more able to give people the environment that they need to actually learn and reflect on things.
Why?
Later. But the fourth response here is on the range of experience of the human condition. I think that this is just not well analyzed, right? Anton just asserts that there's a set human condition that you need to fulfill in order to be a human. I think this ignores the existence of aromantic and asexual individuals who just don't have access to these things. But I think also that this definition is quite broad, or is quite vague, because there are a lot of things that people don't have access to that we think is fine. For example, you don't have as much money as Elon Musk, so you can't fly in a private jet. But you still are able to be a human because you still have like, relationships with people that you think are meaningful by yourself. But I think oftentimes, after we opt out of feeling romantic or sexual attraction, this is a choice that you make, and therefore you can claim on opposition side that you don't give people a choice. But I think furthermore, if they want to claim that you can you should somehow be able to opt back in, I think this is not the case in many choices that we give to people, right? For example, if you opt out of the open break, you can't opt back in afterwards. So I think it's probably fine that we don't give people the option to opt back into romantic and sexual attraction. I'm gonna way over OG here. They give you two pushes. First, relationships are painful. Second, romantic relationships aren't unique and you can get fulfillment on either side. I think we win for two reasons. First, on the suffering that they present to you. I think that suffering, the possibility of suffering on OG is not high enough to weigh over the benefit that OO brings to you. I think only when Francis gives you the extension about how a very large number of people statistically are minorities and will be discriminated against. I think this is the only thing that's enough to tip the balance in favor of suffering outweighing benefits, right? I think secondly, we don't actually need to prove that romantic relationships themselves bring suffering for our case to work. We only prove that because you are attracted to people, therefore you will be discriminated against based on your identity. Therefore, it doesn't really hinge on romantic relationships being successful or not. I think we're able to subvert this clash from the opening bench. But the second reason is that they say that uniqueness of romantic relationships is untrue. I think we do this better because we provide a definition of obsession or rationality, right? This resolves the tension that they have in their case when they say that friendships can be the same as romantic relationships, but they also say that breakups are uniquely painful. I think CO is largely derivative, so I'm not going to respond.
Well, thanks. That's gonna wait to record this debate.
Shit out was there. Romantic. Sorry,
I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Judge. Would you rather live in a world where people feel lonely without knowing the source and reducing the rate of human survival, or where we see longer survival of humanity? Our stance was to prove to you why attraction is necessary to humanity and the living of people, and we believe that we already proved to you why our stance is proved by our first speaker and failing all of the government team's arguments. And before we move on to our team's 2 clashes, we want to clarify to you about the CG's engagement on asexual individuals and LGBTs. We want LGBTs to love, and we believe that they can pursue greater love and happiness in our side of the world despite challenges and define their self-worth. And we believe that the government side's world block every single kind of love, and even asexual and LGBTs will be all blocked. And in our side of the world, we promote and guarantee all type of these romance. And we also believe that we know there are asexuals and they should live in their own life. And it is the CG's burden to explain why more people should choose to be asexual under the veil of ignorance. And we believe that they failed to prove to you this. And let us move on to our team's 2 clashes. Our first clash will be about in which world we see longer survival of humanity, and second would be about what will bring more happiness. And let us move on to our team's first clash, which is in which world we see longer survival of humanity. The OG have stated that there will be more happiness and there will be a better side in the world. Yeah, we believe that these arguments all fail because they, in the government side of the world, we believe that there will only be playing game and they would eat and they would, at the end of the day, they will die. And we believe that this point would threaten humanity, and this is an extremely important factor in our world, yet threatening humanity would bring a greater harm, which is the government team's harm. And we believe that this point false as well. The closing government have stated that there will be other sources like family. Yet we want to question them if will family exist. And we believe that these families wouldn't be able to exist, and the only way these families would exist is in torture or in a way that people make artificial babies. And the CGS also stated that they will make irrational decisions in the status quo. Yet we want to deny this for two reasons. First, there is an alternative that our first speaker has already stated, which is education. Education of reducing irrational decision will be effective in this case, and we believe that blocking and denying all of these Romans is an extremely harmful and extremely burdenful way, and we believe the alternative, which is reducing these irrational decisions, is a better way. And we also believe that second, the case that the closing government has given is an inclusive way, and in all types of scenarios, we believe that there will be an irrational decision harm. And hence we believe that our harm, which is threatening humanity, overweighs the irrationality because we can prevent irrationality, yet we can't prevent the world of our side.
Point.
And we have stated that back before in the history, the reason of why we live and do debate in here in Taiwan is due to romantic and sexual attraction. Why? The reason people have survived and we are all here is due to relationships. Our ancestors kept the human existence by romantic and sexual attraction. No attraction means no love, it means no family, it means no human evolution. In order to keep our species, and if you want to keep humanity, you should and must follow our side instead of the government team's world.
Point.
And we stated that romance is a basis of trust and safety, and sexual attraction is an exploration of potential partner for life. And we believe that these two factors are extremely important in keeping the humanity and not threatening the humanity. And we believe that without these, people will feel lonely and void. But more importantly, we remove the channel for individuals to connect and build bridges and make an evolution to our next stage and and we believe that we lose the basis humanity if we follow the government keeps words. And before we move on, yes.
Actually, I think you should read the motion. It doesn't state that this house prefers a world where you have the choice. It is this house would, which means that it is an individual, not a collective society who does this. Your impact and your entire case is based on humanity. Please engage with this.
We believe that our arguments are suitable to the motion, and we believe that the opening government side have read the motion wrong, and this can include both individual and humanity. And we believe that if individuals collect and if individuals believe in the motion, then humanity will be threatened, and we believe that our citizens would fail. And second is that what would bring more happiness. The opening governments have stated that in the status quo, people cheat, divorce, and get stressed by these romance. Yes, we believe this is extremely correct. There are certain pain in these relationships. We agree that there are suffer in that concept. Yet, Mr. and Ms. Speaker, we want to question something to the government side. Do we need to avoid romance while giving up so many factors? Love contains safety, happiness, meaningfulness, trustworthy, and commitment. Do you really want to and need to give up these? Even if there are alternatives such as hobbies, these are extreme low rates of happiness, and we believe that romance is the extremely important factor to keep the rate of happiness. And we don't agree with the point where we give up all these factors that connect with romance, and we believe that failing romance leads to failing all of the positive emotions. And we believe that people will suffer and feel lonely in the government team's world. And the government team's world is a dystopian society of no positive relationships. And we believe that the government's world has no attraction, no emotion. And we believe that this is the same to 1984 and the Brave New World, where there is no sexual attraction and no romantic attraction. And we believe that their side is a dystopian world. And we believe that we have won over the opening opposition because they only focus on individual survival and they focus on only art. Yet we focus more widely on humanity and why individuals' survival leads to humanity's survival. and we're proud to oppose. Thank you.
Paul, thanks for the debate.
Tough one.
Paul, you can cross the floor and shake hands. The two of us will go out into the debate. Thanks for the round.
Of course, you run